very warm good evening and welcome to this very important session. As you all know that we have assembled here for a very important session, and it's a proud privilege for me that I here on behalf of NIT Durgapur, I am just here with two dignitaries, Professor Indranil Manna, a very big name in the field of engineering. So please give them a big round of applause for NIT Durgapur. And as you all know that our respected director sir, who has been in this institute for the last few days, but these few days are really very important for us because we have been seeing many changes in positive sense. So please welcome sir, Professor Arvind Chaubey, Director NIT Durgapur sir. And as you all know that this program, which is a kind of visionary approach of our नरेंद्र मोदी जी, एक विकसित भारत की परिकल्पना जिसको हमें प्राप्त करना है 2047 तक, आज उसी के ऊपर जो ये विमर्श है, which is called the discourse on developed India by 2047. We have Professor Manna here. So in order to just felicitate and just welcome Professor Manna, I request the Honorable Director of the Institute to please welcome Professor Manna. I request our scholar to just welcome Professor Manna, who is the President of INAE and the Vice Chancellor of VIT Mesra. That is a small token of love from NIT Durgapur. One more memento, that will be a kind of memory. So, we would love if we can. And sir, one more request is, in order to back all this, since NIT Durgapur has been a champion in using jute, so I आपके संज्ञान में मैं लाना चाहूँगा कि NIT Durgapur जूट का जब से मोदी जी ने अनाउंस किया है तब से हम जूट का प्रयोग कर रहे हैं, and as you can see that I am wearing a shirt which is also made up of jute. So with this hope, now I am just going to read a very brief bio. Sir has got a very illustrious career, but for the knowledge of all the students who are present here, who have been attending classes since morning, so you can understand their, I should not say the pain and agony, but yes, they are very excited even in this hour. Professor Manna, as J.C. Bose Fellow of DST, is currently the Vice Chancellor of VIT Mesra Ranchi. He is now the 14th President of INAE since January 1st, 2021, and is passionately involved in making INAE a national agency for promoting engineering and technological self-reliance of India by transnational research, innovation and entrepreneurship. He obtained his Bachelor of Engineering from degree from Calcutta University in 1983, MTech from IIT Kanpur in 1984, and PhD from IIT Kharagpur in 1990. He was a Premchand Roychand Scholar 1992 and Moss Medal Awardee 1999 of Calcutta University. He is an educationist, materials engineer with wide range research interests covering phase transformation, structure property, correlation and modeling in new and nanometric metal and ceramic, laser plasma assisted surface engineering, nano ferrofluid and biotic steel. Sir is a guest scientist. He visited different renowned institutions and universities abroad like Max Planck Institute of Stuttgart, Technological University of Closet, Liverpool University, Nanyang Technological University, NIMS Japan, Unipress Poland and University of Ulm. His research exploits have been published in over 300 peer-reviewed publications. He has guided 30 doctoral theses and conducted 35 sponsored projects worth rupees 25 crore as the PI. He was both a DAAD 1988 to 90 and Humboldt Fellow in Germany. He was honored as a distinguished alumnus by IST Shibpur and IIT Kharagpur. He is a recipient of World Academy of Sciences prizes for engineering sciences and was elected a fellow of TWS 2014. He was the national coordinator of Impacting Research, Innovation and Technology Imprint, a unique technology Development Initiative of MHRD during 2015-20. He is a member of the research boards of several industries R&D like RINL, GAIL, BHEL, ARCL, CI, Ministry of Steel, and serves in several national level committees and boards of DST, DBT, CSIR, SERB, INSA, etc. So it's a very long and very illustrious, very impressive career, but since it's very stipulated time, sir has got a train to catch. That's why I'm just, sir, with your permission, I'm just cutting it short. And now I request Professor Arvind Chaubey to give a very brief intro on this whole program. Professor Chaubey, sir.
In the occasion of AMRIT KAAL VIMARSH VIKASIT BHARAT 2047, it's my pleasure to honor Professor Indranil Manna, all faculty members, students, and the media person. In the era of AMRIT KAAL, where the election progress flows through our veins, it is imperative to revisit and revise our youth policy to ensure a speed fast march towards the vision of a developed India by 2047. This
transformation demands a holistic approach that encompass the Punch plan to AMRIT KAAL. The goal of a developed India, shaping the colonial mindset, enhancing our cultural roots, fostering unity, and instilling a sense of duty among citizens. The first and foremost, the vision of a developed India should be the driving force behind our youth policy. It is essential to define clear goals and objectives that align with the aspirations of our nation. By setting tangible targets for economic growth, social progress, technological advancement, and sustainable development, we can provide a roadmap for youth to contribute meaningfully and actively participate in shaping India's destiny. One significant aspect of revisiting the youth policy is shedding any remains of colonial mindset. We must break free from the chains of inferiority, recognizing the inherent strength and potential within our cultural heritage. As former President Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam once said, if a country is to be corruption-free and become a nation of beautiful minds, I strongly feel there are three key vital members who can make a difference. They are the father, the mother, and the teachers. So we must celebrate our cultural diversity, cultural and knowledge systems, fostering and environmental values, and integrate them into the fabric of our society. So, in this occasion, we Ministry had given the responsibility Professor Mann to deliver the expert lecture on this AMRIT KAAL 2047. So, Sir has to catch the train also. 7:50 the train. So very tight schedule. So I request Professor Mann, please start your lecture. Thank you, sir.
while they fix up the laptop, let me get started. Because Chobe, thanks very much for this very kind invitation, and also to Professor Rai for being the coordinator. And I got a hint already that you already had a long day of lecture, so you're not really in a mood to listen for a very long time. So I would like to make it not so long, but then I'm on a very important mission, and very important, and I must say very gratifying duty to perform, because you're aware that as NIT you are not directly governed by All India Council of Technical Education, but under the instruction of the Ministry of Education, AICT has been given an important responsibility of conducting a series of lectures in the academic institutions. The whole idea is to let the students realize that they are actually very fortunate to be part of a very exciting journey ahead. You are aware that India got its freedom, much coveted freedom, in 1947. So in 2021, India celebrated Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, 75 years of independent India. And then many people started believing that fine, celebration is over, so job is done. But we have a very hard taskmaster in the form of our current Prime Minister. So before the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav got over, he declared that the next 25 years will actually be even more important and exciting journey. India has to emerge as one of the leaders in the world, not because of its very glorious history, but because of the new history that India will make now onward. So in other words, we at the, those of us who are senior citizen already or are soon going to be senior citizen, many of us may not be able to see actually the 100th year of India's independence in 2047, but we certainly would be very much keen to make sure that all of you reach the required potential, or in other words, you are able to harness the best of your potential and make a difference and a huge impact to the national development. So this AMRIT KAAL VIMARSH VIKASIT BHARAT essentially is a reminder that while we have reasons to be proud of our pristine glory, but what lies ahead is even more important. And for that, in my own humble way, I personally believe, maybe because of my own background I have a bias, I personally believe that the synergy among science, engineering and technology will be very, very crucial for India to harness its biggest potential, which the whole world knows is the demographic dividend. So without wasting time, I'll get going, and I think all of you would have seen this a number of times. And so when Professor Sitaram, the chairman AICT, requested me to be part of this celebration, I said, Vikasit Bharat, what would be the most important event to celebrate? And obviously, it's just a sheer coincidence that only late last month, ISRO made us immensely proud. There's not a single citizen of this country, whether living in India or abroad, whoever has connection with India, all of us were immensely proud and elated to see ISRO on behalf of the country making a history that will be remembered for a very long time to come. So what is important is not to be able to just land on the southern pole or the southern side of the moon, but also make a very safe and sound landing, and immediately get busy into collecting data and delivering to the rest of the world. This alone is a matter of pride that no other nation until now has ever tried and been successful to reach to that particular spot. There are, of course, very many advantages and reasons as to why ISRO chose to land on the southern side of the lunar. So I would like to acknowledge Mr. Somnath, the current Secretary ISRO, who personally gave me these slides, and I asked him that can I share with the young friends in NIT Durgapur. He said by all means. Now, we must realize that success doesn't come overnight. In fact, when you are learning a new subject and you are given a very tough problem, and if you happen to solve that problem in very first attempt, you certainly feel very happy, but possibly you haven't learned the subject that well. You would have certainly learned better if you make a few mistakes and you learn through your mistakes what not to do and what is the correct way to approach the problem. And that's exactly what happened with Chandrayaan-2. So in September 6, 2019, Chandrayaan-2 rover was supposed to land on the moon and do exactly what the present rover is doing. It failed. And many of you would have seen Dr. Shivan breaking into tears and weeping on the shoulder of the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister kept his assurance and success followed. So this is a lesson for all of us that we should not get overjoyed with a success in the very first instance. Even if there is a failure, we always should remind ourselves that there is a tomorrow, and no one knows whether that tomorrow is going to, what new surprise is going to bring to us. So when incidentally, I also happen to be in one of the committees of ISRO which thinks about the future missions. Of course, I have very little knowledge to contribute, but ISRO feels that there should be people from various places, so that's how I'm in. Now, there are 6 major improvements that ISRO introduced from what was already done in Chandrayaan-2. In fact, if you ask the chairman ISRO, he'll say that not much of a difference. It was just an accident that happened, and that accident can happen anytime. But we must learn from our mistakes. So in terms of structural design, in terms of thermal insulation, thermal protection, in terms of various mechanisms for design and for approaching the particular site, various communication devices, sensors, various locational geometry and analysis. In various aspects, they kept on analyzing for the last 4 years, and eventually the attempt was successful. So I'm not competent enough to explain to you as to how this entire mission was planned and eventually realized. But some of these view graphs you would have seen already, and those of you who are particularly interested in astrophysics or in space exploration, you would definitely find it most intriguing about the level of precision with which the lunar vehicle approached and eventually was able to land successfully. And so this also shows you exactly where they landed and what was the location and what was the terrain and how difficult was it. But eventually the shuttle landed, separated from the vehicle, and the rover came out, and rover started collecting data and sharing with the rest of the world. Of course, some of the by the way, you would have also seen that there are no dearth of the doubting devils, but US also pictured exact location of the rover and shared with the rest of the world. I think after that there is no confusion and iota of confusion how successful this was. But this is just the prelude. I thought I would share with you for one single reason. Please remember, engineering is never a monolithic approach. Engineering is a systematic approach. So for a system solution like what we just have seen, ISRO doesn't rely only upon the space scientists. ISRO doesn't rely only on combustion engineers. ISRO doesn't rely only on the ones who create the most finest sensors or the ones who can understand the navigation process better or control process better. ISRO works as a team, and ISRO has only one single objective. So this is how actually engineering progresses and engineering triumphs. So I thought nothing can be better than this example. In fact, I told you that I happen to be one of their committees. Can you imagine that in one single launch, ISRO managed to plant 36 satellites. So basically imagine one vehicle going up, defying the gravity into the space, and then one by one releasing 36 satellites in one single launch. This is record of a sort, and it is not just the science or engineering or technology, it's overall system success, because of which today the whole world, all the nations would like to come to ISRO for launching the satellites. That's because it happens to be one of the cheapest and one of the most effective and successful. In order to reach this level, you have to go back into the history as to when did the journey start, 1968. So you can imagine that more than 50 years of very dedicated service, a government department with people like you have reached such a pinnacle of success, which now is a landmark or a benchmark for the rest of the world. But you know, I'm going to, for a minute, take you back, if possible in a time capsule, to more than 5,000 years ago. Just to tell you that knowledge, or our just to acquire knowledge, know the nature and find out the relationship between man and nature, started more than 3,000, more than 5,000 years ago, 3000 BC or even before. Now, in the words of Swami Vivekananda, we all, in order to pursue knowledge, we go through a certain process, like disciplined soldiers. Of course, when you are in the football pitch or when you are outside the classroom, then you are in a very high entropy state. But when you are actually pursuing a certain knowledge course, then discipline is of paramount importance. So Vivekananda said that education is the manifestation of perfection already in man, and character is the test of that. So what you acquire allows you to reach to a higher level. And when you say that I am educated, you might show a few degrees or a few papers, but it's not enough. Ultimately, what proves whether you are educated or not is the character that you develop and demonstrate over a period of time. So we collect data, we collect information, we try to cull that and create a body of knowledge, and eventually we pursue a subject domain to become wise enough in a particular domain. So we go through stages of undergraduate, postgraduate, even higher and higher and higher. And please remember that learning starts the day you are born, and learning never ends until you breathe your last. So that's the course of journey we have throughout our life. So when I said 5,000 years ago, I have evidences. The one who talked about Paramanu, the first ever complete description of the smallest unit of matter, was not from any other place in the world, but from this very land. Rishi Kanar. Today, the whole world is based on, be it financial transaction or solving very intricate mathematical problems or designing or simulating something. Everything is based on digital platforms, right? Even communication is entirely digital. The very basis of digital approach, of scientific approach, was based on the decimal system. In fact, not the Indians, but the Egyptians, they first acknowledged that the decimal system of repeating in every tense came out of India, and it wasn't because of one single individual, but it's quite well documented in the history that Aryabhatta was one who actually made a huge contribution towards. Of course, there were Pingala and many others. But so these were the minds who existed thousands of years ago. But then it's very difficult to explain as to what happened in between, let's say, 800 AD until about 20th or 19th century. But then whatever it is for the historians or the social scientists to figure out. But what is very gratifying is to see a period between 1861 until 1941, starting from Raja Rammohun Roy until death of Tagore. These 80 years, India truly had a renaissance. In these 80-year periods, we had the likes of J.C. Bose, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, C.V. Raman, Satyen Bose, Meghnad Saha, Mahalanobis. I mean, you name, and it's very difficult to explain as to what really propelled for this country certainly to have such huge explosion of very knowledgeable scientists, thinkers, philosophers, literateurs, social reformists. All of them made their own contribution during this period. But I must also mention Visheshwaraya. In fact, we as engineers take pride in saying that we can make a difference. And the first ever example, if you can think of, I mean, of course you can't claim that today, of course, if Aryabhatta was reborn, you would pass him as a computer scientist and computer engineer, but they all are regarded as topmost scientists. But Visheshwaraya is one of the finest examples who actually showed what a system approach is and how does that make a difference to the society. Now I want to come to the core theme of my discourse today. Many of us tend to believe that the ones who does BSc and MSc can never be an engineer. Similarly, the scientists would say that, oh, you did B.Tech, how can you be a scientist? And either you are a science graduate or an engineering graduate, the big industrialists would say that technology is a different ballgame altogether. So you better realize well the distinction between them. But I hold a strong belief that they actually are all interwoven into a single central theme. And that's the synergy that we today in the country, and particularly your generation who are going to shape the future of the nation, should very well understand and pursue. So in my defense of my argument, I'll pose a question. Did anybody ever see that actually an apple fell on the head of Newton? Nobody would quite believe that Newton actually was hit by an apple falling from a tree. But then what is chronicled and absolutely true is that he was the first person who raised a fundamental question that why should apple fall and not fly above? So that gave birth to the concept of gravity. And we know very well today we are celebrating success of ISRO. Without laws of gravity, I don't think it was ever possible to pursue that course at all. But when Newton drew his laws of gravity, he never imagined that on 26th of August 2023, ISRO would send the lunar vehicle and land in the moon with Chandrayaan-3. But it was necessary, otherwise you wouldn't have known what is gravity, and hence you wouldn't know how to defy gravity to have enough combustion and aerodynamic thrust to go all the way up into the outer space. We always derive our inspiration from nature. Birds fly, why can I not? Was the principal theme everybody thought of. But the first known and chronicled design of an aircraft, flying machine, it was not called an aircraft, it was called flying machine, was drawn by Da Vinci. We know Da Vinci as a painter, sculptor, one who drew the very famous painting on the roof of the Sistine Chapel. But he was also an engineer, and he designed quite a few machines, and one of them was this. So he wanted to actually fly like a bird with a flapping wing. Of course, he couldn't do that, but then he ignited that interest, that objective in the minds of the human being. So it took at least 200 more years, 300 more years before the Wright brothers could first establish a successful flight with an artificial machine. You know, the first flight, do you have an idea of how long did it last? 15-20 minutes. No. But it was the first ever demonstration using a man-made machine. Today, from New Delhi, you can reach New York in hours, 13 hours. So it takes humanity to learn stage by stage and reach to that level. Now, this sequence would give you an impression as if science gives rise to engineering and engineering is succeeded by technology. But now look at the bottom of the page, and what you are seeing is this old man, iconic figure everybody recognizes. In 1916, he prophesied something called gravitational wave. It took exactly 100 years for the humankind to prove that gravitational wave does exist. And how was it proven? Through technology. So the laser interferometer gravitational wave observatory, LIGO, the famous LIGO experiment, could detect the existence of gravitational wave for a fleeting microsecond, but it was proven. So in order to prove that the science is right, you also require input from technology. So there's nothing like, the sequence is always science, engineering, technology. So then what is the correct, what is the relationship? So science, if you think of science, you think of these iconic figures of Newton, Einstein, and our own C.V. Raman, J.C. Bose. When you think of engineering, you immediately recall the likes of Edison, the Wright brothers, and so on and so forth. And when you talk of technology, then you know very well that you are talking about not just one or isolated incident, you are talking about a mass number, and which is available for anybody and everybody in the whole world. So science is a fundamental question, why? Why a phenomenon occurs in a particular way and not the other? And you always are truthful to your experiments, to your questions, and you always look for the right answer.
And you are ready to accept your failure or defeat if someone proves that you are wrong. That is science. You don't know whether it's going to be useful tomorrow. You apply potential difference, electrons flow, you consume electric current. And when Faraday showed this, there was no immediate plan or a project that tomorrow there will be a bulb glowing and throwing light all over illuminate the place, or an electric motor will run. It took the genius of Edison to come forward and show that you can make use of electricity for various gainful purposes. So that's the invention which comes through engineering, and hence I say know-how. How do you make use of fundamentals to derive benefit out of that? That's the job of engineering. We start from in your first year, you don't immediately start with combustion or mechanics or any of those very, or so to say even more advanced like control theory or instrumentation and so on. You start with physics, chemistry, maths. The three main pillars of science. And in addition, you also have a good dose of humanities. Because after all, we belong to the human society, so we should lose the values of ethics and other human qualities. So this is the fundamental. Then we go towards translation. So that is know why translated into know how. But the final word is know what sells in the market. And why that is important? Because you show one implement, you prove certain phenomena correct. You create a model or a prototype, you demonstrate in your lab and maybe in a few other labs. It doesn't reach the masses. The humanity doesn't, the humankind does not immediately benefit. So when you have a conductor or a magnetic device or a sensor,
selling in the market throughout and always facing a stiff competition and challenge and emerging better and better day by day, until then you can't call it a technology. So technology is the last mile. So what actually happens in a typical progressive society, particularly the knowledge-based society that we live in today, is academia consumes the knowledge and also disseminates knowledge. Like in any academic institution like INAE Durgapur, all your faculty members, they basically pursue knowledge in either of the two ways. Either they teach you in the classroom with the knowledge domain and volume of knowledge already available, that's dissemination. And next time, he or she is busy with the PhD scholar and producing new knowledge. So that's creation. So if knowledge is a coin, it has two sides. One is teaching, the other one is research. So that's how science progresses. Any subject domain progresses. But when you create new knowledge, what do you do with it? The research organizations, they pursue the invention in the science, engineering, technology domain. Industry absorbs, and industry knows how to replicate and translate that into multiple copies and make it available to the entire society at an affordable cost without violating the ethics and many other norms, with the least amount of expenditure of energy, time, and without violating the norms of the ethics. And society gleefully accepts that. So we are very happy to carry a cell phone, which is, all of you, I'm sure, are very happy to have a cell phone, which is supposed to be one of the best today. In today's condition, it has functions which probably is possibly one of the fastest, one of the most efficient one, and so on and so forth. Every year, Apple launches a new version. Samsung launches another new version. How do they do that, and why do they do that? Because there is no saturation of knowledge. There is no end of the technology game. Every time, otherwise the whole world will have a static body of knowledge and nothing else will grow. Every day, as you make an effort and as you produce something excellent, you also leave room for further improvement of that. And that happens through a perpetual cycle. So it is because of this reason you create knowledge, you go for invention, viable technology emerges, the society consumes, but again creates a new ambition for even better, faster, cheaper, more efficient, more energy economical, and so on and so forth. So while this process continues, the journey from know why to know how to know what sells, you actually go through a very vicious stage in between, which is typically called the valley of death. You demonstrate something, you identify something, you discover something, you invent something, and now you want to take it to the marketplace, to the society. And in between, you have to solve certain puzzles which are not necessarily your own creation. Nobody wishes but that's inevitable because you are competing against the mighty industries who have already established products in the market. You have to also overcome certain regulatory measures. You have to worry about energy, efficiency, ethical issues, recyclability, very many factors. And of course, very many processes of approval and so on. So many of these bright ideas eventually perish because you give up beyond a certain point. But then, you know, many of us actually always encourage you to patent. Why patent? Because you create an intellectual property, and if you want to make use of that, exploit that to the fullest extent, you'd like to retain your authority over that. Do you have an idea how many patents actually get translated into a product? Not even in two digit. The success rate is hardly about 4 or 5%. So for every 100 patent you file, not even 5 of them eventually see the light of final application. Yet, why do we patent them? Because this is how the entire process moves. Unless you have your intellectual property guaranteed. Another possibility could be that you publish in open journal, then somebody else, if not you, can make use of that. So, depending on the particular strategy, you decide whether you would like to patent or you would like to publish. But nevertheless, what is important is that every time you publish a paper, do you mean that you actually have created absolutely a new discovery like the penicillin of Alexander Fleming? Certainly not. In a 30-page publication, in the conclusion, which is half a page, there could at best be 3 or 4 lines or phrases which are absolutely new. In order to establish those new phrases or new outcome, you have to provide evidences. So you subject yourself to scrutiny, you submit to the journal, goes for blind review. You don't know who is reviewing your paper, but they are peers, and they either accept or reject or ask for revision, and you faithfully comply with that. So this is the discipline through which we have to proceed. So whatever you do, you know, for example, we all would like to carry good number of certificates and be very happy that I have this degree, that recognition, this award. If you show any one of them, which are actually signed by yourself, that has no value. Nobody would believe that. So you submit a manuscript and it gets accepted as a new knowledge only when the peers accept it. Science always progresses through such very rigorous scrutiny. But it only establishes the truth, but not the application. So this is where the translation is important. Now, here is an example. We always tend to cite faces which are not Indian faces. I mean, we don't have very many of them. Here is an example, and an example which is one of the finest. Not many of us quite appreciate that. Mercurous nitride was a compound designed and synthesized for the first time by Prafulla Chandra Ray. He was a very sickly man. If you read his biography, you'll be all surprised that he actually gave up his education, took a break, because he used to be perennially ill. And those were the times of cholera and dengue and Kala-Azar and whatnot. But he had the grit and determination. Eventually he finished his first degree, went abroad, took his PhD from the University of Edinburgh, and eventually did something phenomenal. So he not only discovered, now most of the scientists or many of us would be very happy to publish a paper and be content with that. So he realized the potential and he created an industry out of that, borrowing money from the lenders. And the outcome was Bengal Chemicals, one of the first and the finest example of an academic creating a startup which eventually produced wealth. So much so that Bengal Chemicals created huge number of jobs and very many new products. Not people of your generation, people of my generation or even earlier who grew up in this part of the country would have used very many products coming out of Bengal Chemicals. So why I'm quoting this example is because it reminds us, Startup India. What does he mean? He means that the engineers and scientists should not necessarily be only job seekers, should also be job creators. So that's possibly the ultimate goal. In fact, today I see among the young generation a huge appetite for trying out something very new altogether. I mean, that way you are very different than our generation. We didn't have really neither the courage nor that kind of an outlook. But I also will have one line of advice to you, that don't get burnt out. If you launch an entrepreneurship, make sure that you don't have to come back. What does that mean? It means you have sufficient grounding in the fundamentals of your subject domain. If you're pursuing mechanical engineer, be one of the finest mechanical engineers and come back and complete your degree. But do complete your degree, because I told you the success rate is not even 5%. So there is every possibility that despite all the promises, you're not successful. Then what do you fall back upon? So you have to have sufficient knowledge. Not everybody is going to be a Bill Gates or a Page. I mean, such kind of successes are very, very rare. So what is important is that you acquire sufficient knowledge, not necessarily a degree certificate, but sufficient proficiency in your subject domain so that you can pursue in the future. Now let me turn to something interesting. At the end of the 20th century, US being US, created a committee with their Secretary of State as a chair and drew 50 different subject domain experts, including some Indians, from 40 different countries. And they were charged with one single task: define what lies ahead, what challenges lie ahead of the humanity in the 21st century. So after long deliberations, they came out with 14 specific targets. For example, make solar energy economical, provide access to clean water. So these are very specific tasks, 14 grand challenges. And US wanted the entire world to rally behind them and be active partners in pursuing these grand challenges. 2014, Ministry of Education did an MHRD, created a retreat in Goa and tasked all the IT directors to come up with something grand that the country should get from the IITs. So the moot question was, we are institutes of technology, like National Institute of Technology. What technology have we produced? What difference has it made to the society? So we got ourselves divided into groups. We came out with certain suggestions. For 1.5 years, the deliberations continued. And eventually, we came out with a proposal which was accepted by the ministry. And that's how this grand initiative called Impacting Research, Innovation and Technology, acronym IMPRINT, came out. On 5th of November 2015, the highest political leadership of the country, the Prime Minister and the President, launched this program from the Rashtrapati Bhavan Darbar. This is where the ministries take oath. Just imagine how much importance was laid on this initiative. So the whole idea was very simple. Aim inclusive growth and self-reliance by translation of knowledge into viable technology. So that was the mandate. We thought about all possible engineering challenges that lie ahead, divided them into 10 technology domains. So here the difference is that we are looking from the exit side, from the output side, not from the input side. We are not saying mechanical engineering or chemical engineering. We are saying, what are the biggest technological innovations awaited in healthcare technology? We want to be happy and healthy. These days, before you see a doctor, you see only instruments and various diagnostic tools. And and these are needed because the doctor relies upon those data. How can India come out with the finest of the healthcare technology implements? So likewise, we divided into 10 domains: living world and materials world. IIT Kanpur was made the chair of that group. Anyway, that's a different thing altogether. So at the launch, the Prime Minister said something very, very important. He said, science is universal, but engineering solutions must have relation to the local demands. So what he meant was that you pursue science, you learn science, but think of the nation and solve the problems and challenges of the nation. And in return, on behalf of the group, I said, sir, we have million challenges. How? 10 technology domains. Each domain has themes. Each theme has topics. Each topics can be subdivided into specific titles. So you already have 10 raised to 4 challenges. And India is a vast country, so 100 variant of each is quite possible. So you're talking about already million challenges. But million challenges can easily be taken up by a billion mind, 1.45 billion. Today we are the most populous state in the world. So take, for example, energy as a domain. How are we going to solve the issues of that? What are the issues? The total India is not only large but also quite varied, out of which about 50%, precisely 57%, is based on fossil fuel reserves, coal, oil, natural gas, and the remaining 43% are from non-fossil fuel reserves. So if you look at this pie chart, it looks fairly respectable. So now we are talking about 400 plus gigawatt hour of electricity demand. Now the question is, if you compare ourselves with the rest of the world, the total energy consumption region-wise, as you are seeing here, you realize that the bulk of the energy is consumed by China because of its very vast population and vast terrain. But otherwise, all the UK, US and European Union put together also consumes a lot. But India belongs to one of the remaining part. But look at this change that is happening now. So this red line is China. So this is how the demand of China is increasing and exponential. This is where the world average lies. India consumes still way below the world average. But we are not only a very young nation, we also are a very aspiring nation. The average age of India today is 28 or 29. So obviously people who are just about a little older than you, they have a long way to go. Everybody has a lot of ambition. So obviously the energy demand will be large. And as a result of which, and by the by, energy consumption per capita is one of the indices of the progress of a nation. In fact, at the end of the speech, I will show you why this is more important. But what is very important for us to realize is that this used to be the picture even just about 10-15 years ago. More than 2/3, almost 75-80% of the energy used to come from fossil fuel. You live in Durgapur, you know what it means that if you are totally dependent on coal and various other fossil fuel reserves, and if you have to burn them, then you are certainly jeopardizing the environment. And that's not desirable, and moreover that's not sustainable. So you have to look for the better alternatives, more sustainable alternatives. And this is how it looks now in the last few years, and this is how it will look in about 10 years or about 7-8 years from now. Almost 50% will be from renewable resources. So this Vikasit Bharat that we are talking about is all about this. To change the scenario to a more sustainable and a more successful regime where we are not only able to exploit our resources but also ensure that no life, no environment is put to danger. So this is how, this red line that you are seeing, this is how actually the share of towards the renewables will rise. And by 2047, which is the target that the Honorable Prime Minister has set, this red line will overtake all other bars that you are seeing here. So we'll produce more energy from renewable resources than from non-renewable resources, and there the contributions will come to a large extent not only from solar but hydro and several other possibilities, hydrogen and several other possibilities. So in order to do that, what is the biggest empowerment that is awaited in the society? And that's why I showed you the very first graph, education. An educated nation can never be dwarfed by anybody else, because every individual is empowered. And in order to do that, the government today talks about the national education, not talks about, implements, talks about implementation, exploitation of national education policy. So we are talking about equitable and vibrant knowledge society. We are talking about access, equality, affordability, accountability and quality in the education. Very many attributes. So that's another topic altogether. A full day lecture on it is quite possible. Let's not worry about that. There are people who are busy implementing this. But what is the point that I'm trying to make out here? Gross enrollment ratio. At any age group, at any particular age group, how many people have attained education of a certain quality and level out of the entire population of that age group? So this, in the tertiary level today, is not a very respectable figure. The overall GER today stands somewhere less than 30%. The Prime Minister wants this to go all the way to 50% by 2047. It's a tall order, but achievable. So in order to do that, this is how things are changing for the better. And Ministry of Education has already declared that the current level is 27%. Whether it's 26 or 27 or 20, that's not the issue. The issue is there's a steady rise. And in order to create educated society, it's not important that you turn out to be mechanical engineer or electrical engineer from NIT Durgapur and you worry or you know only about electrical machines and not about any other domain. It is important that we turn each one of you into someone who actually can provide a system solution, like what ISRO has achieved. So you should have firm foundation, very clear fundamentals, and at the same time should have an appetite to absorb into multidisciplinary domains. And that is fairly possible within these 4 years, provided you pay enough attention to your fundamental classes in first year and second year, and always keep asking yourselves, what is that I can do? What is that I can do different than what has already been done? And if you keep asking yourself this, maybe by the end of another year or two, you certainly see a light or a direction in which you wish to pursue. And I won't be surprised if some of you turn up to be a very major entrepreneur or an electrical engineer turning into creating a chemical industry, or a chemical engineer making sensors for the rest of the world, and so on and so forth. So what inspires you the most? That's very important. So these are certain data and statistics how imprint actually moved in imprint 1, imprint 2 and several. So 2015 November it was launched. I told you that imprint was unique because of certain reasons. Number one, it was not domain specific, it was interdisciplinary. Number two, first time all IITs, all NITs, all of them came together. Third, this was an initiative entirely based on academic institutions leading the way towards translation. So institutes of technology were tasked to produce technology. So what was the outcome? In about 4 years, less than 4 years, there was a technology exposition in IIT Delhi in the presence of the Honorable Minister, and nearly 70 prototypes were displayed. Nearly 70 prototypes were displayed. They were not two-dimensional. In fact, I used to say that imprint is not about two-dimensional output. It's all about three-dimensional output, meaning no publication, no patent. You continue to do that, but what you bring on the table should be a three-dimensional prototype or a product. So I'm not going to details, but these were the prototypes. Some of them, as you see here, they were displayed, and they certainly drew the attention of the community. I'm changing gear, going into another domain, and this is a domain where I was very fortunate to have spent 3 years of my career in a CSR laboratory in Calcutta dedicated to glass and ceramics. Now, without going to the history and so on, by the way, this laboratory was created by Meghnad Saha. Not created, basically he was the pioneer who first gave this task to CSIR as a member of the CSIR society. He understood the importance of very high quality glass, functional glass, for making lenses and cameras and microscopes and so on. So this yellow block that you are seeing here, just if you follow me just for next 2-3 minutes, you'll understand. So this is a meter by meter block, about several inches thick glass block. Question is, what is so great about it? Then I said this has 75 or 70 to 75% lead oxide. So what? Then I say that this is the only composition of the glass which can stop gamma ray, alpha ray and beta ray for sure. Why so important? Because this was fixed and this was developed for this yellow windows in Tarapur reactor of Bhabha Atomic Research Center, the place where India successfully demonstrated exploitation of radioactivity. Now, radioactivity is a phenomenon you all know. Once you start the process, or once it starts emitting radioactive rays, you can't go and handle them. So once you create a chamber and start processing uranium to make nuclear fuels, forever you'll never be allowed to get inside and fix something if something goes wrong. So how do you operate? Remotely. While you operate remotely, you need to see what you are actually maneuvering. So you have robo arms and various other things, but then you must see where is the material, where is the device and so on. So you need a vision, you need a glass, or you need a transparent window through which you can see. If you use any window other than this glass, beta and alpha may get stopped, but gamma can easily penetrate. And you know very well, wavelength-wise, that's the most dangerous and most penetrating. So in order to stop gamma penetrating the window, you require almost a meter thick glass block of nothing other than lead oxide, majority, not borosilicate glass. If you use borosilicate glass, then the thickness of the window will be twice or thrice the thickness that I'm talking about. Why? Because borosilicate has much lower density. In order to make the glass very dense, you use one of the densest material, lead, and create such a configuration that you replace Si4+ by Pb4+ in the silicate matrix and make the material very dense and very thick, very viscous. This material, if the cost of the project was 100 crore, 75 crore of that project would be spent on only one component, and that is the crucible in which you melt. Can you imagine what is that crucible made out of? Pure platinum. So imagine, in order to pursue nuclear energy program, the country requires very many things. Also one of these transparent windows, which only one laboratory or one organization in the country is capable of doing, and it took nearly 40 years for this lab to perfect that art. and eventually meet the successful delivery of the required amount. So scientific pursuit leading to a technology could take 40 years. But what is the benefit? If you don't have this technology, then you are perpetually dependent upon the mighty companies of US and Russia and Germany, and any day they can pull the plug and say that supply is stopped. Your nuclear program comes to a grinding halt. So today that India is sending satellites to the orbit, rover to the moon, even moving towards Mars and very many other, is all because of sustained effort in scientific pursuits. And those scientific pursuits are possible only when we know how to make a team and then pursue a common objective or a goal. You have used uranium, you have derived its maximum potential, it still has residual radioactivity. What do you do with that? You can't throw it in the open. That's enough harmful. What do? You have to take it to a safer repository where no natural hazard could ever create a situation whereby it contaminates the groundwater or soil. So you have to bind it in a very strong covalently bonded silicate network, cast them in a canister made out of thickest steel, and then bury it underground in distant, remote desert places well below the earth in very thick concrete slabs. Why? Because even the most disastrous earthquake will not be able to bring the radioactive elements in contact with groundwater or soil. So for that, this is all known, but you have to create these silicate nodules which will be used to bind the uranium oxide so that uranium goes inside. Very tiny little, again you can't approach, so it has to be completely spherical, should have good flowability, should have the required melting point, and then you should be able to handle remotely. This science is nothing new, is well known, well established. But how long will a lab continue to develop this and supply? A lab is not meant for supplying, lab is meant for invention, newer things. So this know-how was created and transferred to a company. The company gives up. She says that there's not enough market, enough business for me. Why should I invest my time and money for pursuing this? Today, the entire network for communication is based on optical fiber, thinner than your hair. Fibers which are thinner than your hair, made out of silica. And that particular silica fiber that I am talking about is actually a concentric tube, a tube within a tube. So I have an outer diameter, and that may be few tens of a micrometer, and within that I have a few micrometer thin tube which has a vastly different refractive index. You all know what is total internal reflection. So optical communication is based on such fibers which will allow light in the form of a signal to be launched on one end, which can never dissipate or diffuse out of the fiber. So now imagine that I am asking you to create a fiber which is 10 micrometer. Inside that you have a 2 micrometer inner core which has a very different refractive index, and that is possible when you have a very different composition. I am not talking about metal, I am talking about SiO2, one of the most brittle material. So CGCRI created this technology, demonstrated, created very many devices which were given to companies which were profitable, but you still cannot compete with the mighty companies in the world. Hip joint, those who develop deformities or accidents or something, wishes to change the knee or the hip. At that point, 2011, a hip joint created by CGCRI made out of ceramics, because you know when the bone breaks, you can't change the bone, replace the bone with a metal. because density wise you're talking about something which is 4 times more denser, 4 times heavier. So in order to replace a damaged bone or a joint, you need something similar, so made out of ceramic, and CGCRI created that. Would sell at 25,000 rupees. The same component sold in the market would cost 1.5 lakhs, those say, 6 times more. Still, people would go for 1.5 lakhs. Why? This is the difference between engineering invention and innovation and technology success. The companies, the multinational companies who bring products, tomorrow one of you can actually design a cell phone which will have the same functionality, same efficiency level, but you won't be able to compete with the mites of the big multinational companies. Because if a product, for example, do you have an idea how much does a bottle of water, you know how much does it cost? 1 liter costs 20 rupees. Do you know what is the cost of the material? Not even a rupee. So 19 rupees is actually to take care of the sustainability of the company, research and innovation, various forms of regulatory affairs, and investment for the future. The material cost is hardly 50 paise. So if you have to compete with the established technology, scientific equation is not enough. Engineering prototype is not enough. You have to build in all other, you have to insure against all other challenges and threats, and then only you will go to that level. Oh, we are, okay, I'll take another 5 minutes of time. No, I mean, I would like to make a point. I have plenty of slides, but I can stop anytime. The whole idea is to convey to you what does it require to create a technology. Just look at these very important numbers at the end. So, until about a particular time, 2005, there were only 14 companies trying to sell some very cheap material, you know, something called products which are made out of Ukrainian clay. You don't necessarily need a PhD to create an invention or innovation. So local technicians, they showed certain process because of which entire amount of Ukrainian clay, which used to be 28%, got replaced by a local clay through certain chemical treatment. So a local clay was made equivalent to Ukrainian clay. And what used to be 14 now became 64 units in 2011, each improving their profit margin by 3.5 crore per annum. Imagine a small company who used to earn about 50 lakhs or 60 lakhs per year is now earning 3.5 crore a year. And there used to be 14, now there are 64 companies just in a span of 2 or 3 years. So that's the power of innovation. So what I mean to say is that you don't necessarily always have to think of radioactivity or optical fiber or very high-end hip joints and so on. Innovations can happen and make a huge difference to life and entrepreneurship, provided you actually hit upon a bright idea and you're able to demonstrate that. Now, I want to just tell you 1 or 2 quick facts. You know, India is not a monolith. Let's all be very clear. India is a conglomerate of ideas and beliefs and various schools of thoughts over centuries, not just few years or decades. You travel every 200 years, you see a change in the complexion of the person, the language, food habit, very many other things. So in order to address the national issues, it is important that we actually first learn India. And I can cite you one example, what it takes to learn about India. A young man at the age of 25 decides to know his motherland. And what he did was something very phenomenal. No one has done that before. So he starts from the eastern part of the country and by foot travels all the way up to the southernmost point of the country. And then he faints. And the fisherman lifts him up, give him a new lease of life. So what he said after coming to consciousness was that he has seen what is India. So we all have to learn. I mean, I'm sure at your age, You probably are coming from the eastern or western or southern side of the country. How much do we know our neighbors? Unless we know, how am I going to address to their aspirations and challenges? So it's very important that we all keep our eyes open and start absorbing. So there are issues. There are issues in terms of, let me come to this figure. Can you see where is India here? So this is a way the economists look at it. Human Development Index, which has very many factors in it, as a function of per capita power consumption. Do you remember why I talked about energy? Energy consumption is a good index of the quality of life today. So this is how the regression goes. And you see there are nations, very small nation, very little economic power, Iceland, Norway, some of the Gulf nations, and developed nations like Germany, USA, Norway, they are above the regression line. India is somewhere here. So we have a way to go. We have a long way to go. And the task is even more onerous because we are going to now, in the future, address the aspirations of nearly 1.45 billion people. Very young. All of them have huge aspirations. So in order to do that, we have to invest very heavily in research. And the central government is well aware of that. And that's how the National Research Foundation has been created, which is going to address all the major scientific issues. So if you look at some of these numbers, very interesting, 47, 97, let's say 2017 or 20, around that, and 2047, 25 years quarter, okay? GDP, 2.7 trillion, 34 trillion, 262 trillion, 2144 trillion. This is the projection, 2047 is the projection. Population from 340 million to 1.65 billion. Per capita income, paltry 250 rupees a year, and we are looking at 12 lakh, 37, and so on and so forth. Average, this is average per capita. In terms of energy consumption, from 16 all the way to, 3 orders of magnitude higher. GER, we are looking at, this is a primary of course, a secondary, then tertiary. Infant, a child out of 1,000 child born at the time of independence, 150 will perish. Today, not even 13, not even 14. Life expectancy used to be 32 and today it's 74 or even higher. So in all parameters, steel production, we are looking at 500 million tons in 2047. Right now we are about 125, 120 around that. Aviation market, total road length, rail track length, car production. In every single parameters of economic growth, the country is showing huge, enormous progress. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, nominal, and purchase power parity wise the 3rd largest. The Honorable Prime Minister wants us to reach the 4th spot within the next few years. And this is doable. So how this is going to be doable? It is, in my humble opinion, through this synergy of science, engineering and technology. So what I wish to submit to all my young friends here, science is pursuing the truth relentlessly, regardless of its necessity or immediate scope of application. Science provides clues, if not answers. Science extends as far as imagination goes. Science never fails, but some scientists can. Engineering is all about enabling and providing solutions, borrowing from the fundamentals of science. And technology is the last mile for societal benefit based on scientific discovery and engineering inventions and innovations. So let us ensure that science, engineering and technology, with a reversible sign in between, please note, I'm not saying it's a one-way traffic, in India complement each other and flourish together so that our society soon achieves the desired culture, growth and prosperity. If India has one unique resource and strength that the entire world envies, that certainly is our demographic dividend, the youth, the youth. This is exactly why Ministry of Education wants the ones who have possibly exhausted all options in his own life come and not preach but plead. Believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. You can make a huge difference, each one of you. And engineering can ensure self-reliance and hence self-esteem. Today, ISRO has given us exactly that, self-esteem. This wasn't the case 30, 40 years ago when I had the opportunity of stepping out first time in my life to a country abroad. Today we walk on the streets of Europe and America with our head held high. It's all because of the innovations and innovations that has happened. But let's not get complacent. We have just made a beginning. Nearly 20%, 1/5, 1 out of 5 of the entire population live in India. And in fact, very soon, we probably already have overtaken China. So the point is that if the per capita income, if that is one of the index that we are looking at, has to follow this curve, then we are looking at 3 orders of magnitude more than what we are today. And that's going to be possible provided we empower this young man. Thank you very much. Namaskar and Jai Hind.
Just for 2 minutes. Thank you very much, sir, for this enlightening and I must say inciting and igniting lecture. And I am very sure, as per the directive of the ministry and with the permission of sir, I would like to take couple of questions because it is again a kind of direction from the ministry that we should make it a kind of interaction session. So can we take just couple of questions? So with this ignited mind and the young minds as well as the mature minds before us, just we can go for 2 questions, just 2. So please raise your hands, we can just go with the mic. Yes, please. Yes, put it across. A bit louder if you can.
Thank you. Sir, how do you feel about engineers getting into administrative or management field? Thank you, sir.
Can you think of a football team where all 11 are goalkeepers? Can you think of musicians or a troupe where everybody only knows playing sitar and not tabla or any other instrument? So if we are approaching a benefit, if we are embarking on a mission, we require input from various quarters. What am I as Vice Chancellor of an institution? I'm an administrator, but I take a course every semester, no matter whether I'm Director CGCR or Director at Kanpur. I've always taken a course every semester. I do publish. Now, do you think the captain of a cricket team or a football team can be chosen from who is a very top athlete just because one can run very fast? You need a domain knowledge. So an engineer turning into an administrator is just turning into a required component of the society so that as a whole the team functions. But I'm not going to say that all electronics engineer of this institution tomorrow should become an administrator. But some of us have to take our turn. Professor Chaube is here because the ministry feels that he is competent to lead this institute for a while. You had Anupam Basu coming from Kharagpur who led this institution for a while. Now somebody else is doing that. So we take our turn and when we come back, we go back into our core discipline. But I for one personally always believe that my first and foremost identity is that I'm a teacher and a researcher. And then if you ask me to be a goalkeeper for a while, I'll be the goalkeeper if I can. Tomorrow if you say you be the wicket keeper, I'll try that. If the team feels that I'm competent, I'll do that for the sake of the team. Okay. I think they're all exhausted, huh? Okay.
They are satisfied with you. And sir, one thing here I would like to put on record that under the leadership of Professor Chaube, when he joined the institute, we just took the pledge of Panch Pran. In the Panch Pran, the Developed India concept by 2047, हम लोगों ने अपने हाथ में देश की मिट्टी को लेकर ये प्रण किया है 15 अगस्त को कि हम, जिसमें पहला ही ये शर्त है कि हम इस देश को 2047 तक एक विकसित राष्ट्र बनाएंगे। और इसी संकल्प के साथ मैं इस सभा को यहाँ पे सर आपकी अनुमति से और प्रोफेसर चौबे सर की अनुमति से यहाँ पे सर अब सबको वोट ऑफ थैंक्स के साथ समाप्त करने की अनुमति चाहता हूँ, क्योंकि सर we are really very thankful for this enlightening lecture. Thank you very much, and sir please come here again and again. Thank you very much, sir.
So first year students do not move arbitrarily, okay? You systematically move downstairs. Faculty members and staffs are waiting, those who are in anti-ragging duties, so they will be guiding you to the respective hostels.